right, so let's start thinking about the fun world of sort of like recreation activities, right? Because that's something that we all primarily probably enjoy. I mean, again, we live in West Virginia and outdoor recreation is a huge thing here, right? So let's talk a little bit about recreation. So recreation is all about sort of creating a balance, right? It's sort of about maintaining wellness or wholeness or something that just kind of like makes your soul happy, right? So the word recreation implies the use of time in a manner designed for therapeutic refreshment. This can be going for a hike. This can be doing something that just makes you happy. Like I love rafting, and then I get to go rafting. Leisure is also a word sort of thrown around in the recreation space a lot, and leisure is just best described as time free from work. I'm an economist, right? So a lot of the time when we actually look at people's decisions, we see their decisions in two main buckets, whether they are consuming, so they have consumption decisions, or they are not consuming and it's a leisure decision. And it's a very simplified way of looking at the world, but it makes the world mathematically possible to understand. Some recreation professionals use words like leisure and recreation interchangeably, but I kind of prefer the idea of recreation since this might in itself be forms of work, but it's things that make you sort of happy, right? So there's lots of different types of recreation. Let's kind of go through them. So first, let's talk about government-sponsored recreation. Government raises lots of special funds for recreation activities, right? There's automobile and recreation vehicle taxes, boat taxes, motor taxes, transit occupancy taxes on hotels, state lotteries, which state lotteries, some of that money actually does go to scholarships. But overwhelmingly, a lot of this money goes to being able to support roadways, public recreation, park agencies, and different places that might have attraction for tourists coming into your area, right? So it's sort of like raising money from hotels from people who are visiting to be able to help build things to make more people want to visit. And this is how a lot of different governments are able to sustain recreation. Now, the kind of broadest base of outdoor recreation, that we think about is the national parks, right? So the US has 407 national parks. Actually, I think it's higher. I think it might be 410 now, which we actually have one of, like I mentioned earlier, one of the youngest ones with the New River Gorge Bridge. But this encompasses maybe 80 million acres of land. That's a huge amount of just outdoor spaces where people can go for a low nominal or no fee whatsoever, right? So there's nearly 300 million visits to national parks every single year, and they're maintained by the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior. And this is actually just a huge base of outdoor recreation and adventure in the US, right? And other governments have similar systems to having these sort of sponsored outdoor spaces, but by and large, I think the National Park Service is one of the largest ones. We also have public recreation and park agencies. What is that show? Parks and Rec. If you know Parks and Rec, you're fine. You understand now. But by the early 1900s, 14 cities had these sort of like supervised play facilities for like children, and people were like, playgrounds are the best. And then they started putting playgrounds everywhere. And as they put playgrounds everywhere, they were like, we can't put playgrounds on street corners. Maybe we should have green spaces for them. Maybe we should develop parks. And that's where we really saw the rise of like parks and playgrounds happening. And this is where we got a lot of different municipal parks. And municipal parks, while not used for it as often as it is now, was definitely a sort of meeting space for long periods of history. Municipal parks were used for local bands. They were used for being able to have picnics or for festivals or for gatherings or stuff like this. And many still are. So while municipal parks aren't as well budgeted as they once were, in real values, not in nominal values, they're not as well budgeted as they once were. They're still extremely important for maintaining just like happiness and wellness and outdoor recreation. We also have commercial recreation. So these are the ones that aren't necessarily like owned by government sponsor or by the government, but they're ones that might be sponsored by the government. So these are ones where you might have like social programs and community service. Focusing on sort of like eco and adventure tourism. So like whitewater rafting, but like whitewater rafting where they're very conscious to pick up everything, and like if you have lunch, to make sure that everything is clean and you take care of the river and you are there. Yeah, most of those are run by commercial recreation companies, but the inputs that they have for the boats, the outputs that they have for the boats, the roadways to be able to get there. A lot of those are maintained by a lot of government sponsored pieces who want to keep this commercial recreation going because it's a version of tourism, which brings new money into an area instead of just the same money being spent in an area. Then we get to theme parks. Okay, theme parks is my favorite. And I will try my best to keep this brief. I will absolutely try my best. Theme parks are by far one of the most fascinating parts of tourism and hospitality, and weirdly something that I care a lot about. So I know a ton on theme park history. It's something that I would honestly like to teach a class on at some point if there's enough students who'd be interested in taking it. Because theme park management and history and just even the science behind how queue systems work is just fascinating to me. But so we're going to talk about some of the major theme parks, but no, this is by far not the most fascinating or interesting set of theme parks. For example, I have about an hour-long rant about the history of Santa Claus themed theme parks in the US. That's great, but no, I'm not going to give you that, mostly because I know that you'll turn off the video. I'm sort of jaded that we don't have time for an entire section on this, but if you're interested, like let me know. So the oldest theme park in the U.S. is Lake Compounce. This was opened in 1846. Basically, electricity was new and exciting, and there was electrical experiments there, like, you know, where you can like touch one globe and then touch the other globe and then your hair rises up, stuff like that. It was actually one of the first themed attractions that brought people in. We didn't have the first roller coaster theme park in the U.S. until 1884. Now, that's not the first roller coaster, though. The first roller coaster was actually in Europe in like the 1300s. A whole mess. Anyways, but the oldest roller coaster theme park is Coney Island, and theme parks sort of create sort of this whimsical atmosphere, right? Of different places and times, but they typically concentrate on a dominant theme. For example, Universal Studios focuses on Universal Studio products. Disney focuses on Disney products. Carowinds, which is one that's on the border in North Carolina and South Carolina, is now a Cedar Fair park, but before it was a Cedar Fair park, they focused heavily on Hanna-Barbera. Similar with King's Dominion. We have Busch Gardens that's focused on many of the Busch Garden products. So there's different architecture, landscaping shows, and merchandise all focused on whatever this particular theme is that brings people in, right? So by and large, the biggest, well, not necessarily the biggest, because you do have Six Flags, but I hate Six Flags. Just like the entire Six Flags corporate strategy is terrible and mismanaged. But Disney's probably one of the largest sets of theme parks. Also, I should have mentioned this earlier, because you're hospitality and tourism students, there's many internships both within the cruise industry and within Disney, right? So there's lots of different Disney internships that can take you down and teach you a lot about Disney. I myself have to address my own biases. I don't like the Disney products as much, but that's just because I have a very huge interest in theme parks, and it's just they just don't resonate with me the same way that other theme park management systems do. But I understand that like this is something that people love, right? And it's something very important. And there are really cool internships down there that you might be interested in. If you are, please talk to Frank and AJ, because I think both of them have placed students there. Anyways, so Walt Disney sort of began because or the Disneyland theme parks began because Walt Disney took his two daughters to a theme park and was like, wow, we could do this, but better, right? And he felt that there should be some sort of like family park that wasn't geared towards like just taking your children there and having fun, or just the adults having fun, but like parents and children able to have fun together, right? So the opening, just fun fact, the opening day of Disneyland almost broke the park. They were not prepared for the massive crowds coming in, and like systems went down and there wasn't enough staffing and everything was a mess, to the point where it's actually considered one of the most dismal openings of a theme park. But they obviously came back because it was such an extremely interesting movement for many people, having this sort of thing surrounded by the storytelling and animation elements that had been known by Walt Disney. So for a little bit of background on that, Mickey and Minnie Mouse first appeared on an episode called Steamboat Willie, where Mickey Mouse, this is like back when I think he had like individual fingers and was just kind of whistling along while driving the boat. Anyways, this was basically the first animated cartoon in this popularized series, and it came out in 1928. This was a major shift in the animation and storytelling. From here, we got many of the older products that we have. So like Snow White, which is the oldest Disney princess. This is where we got many of the earlier stories, such as like Bambi, which actually did extremely poorly at first, and didn't end up becoming popularized till years later. And that's why the animation department of Disney almost went bankrupt twice. The other one was because of a massive party. Anyways, I won't go into my side tangents. This was sort of the first prize of these animated series, and having a themed theme park around the products of Walt Disney ended up both attracting people who were interested in the fun and amusement, but also people who were very attracted by this theme, this thing that they had seen on televisions and in theaters. So today, Disney has parks all over the place. They have a few different ones in California, a few different ones in Florida, Hong Kong, a few different ones in Japan, France, which has had a lot of issues in it, and then China. There are also 2 abandoned theme parks. So both of these are within Florida. So River Country, there was a brain-eating amoeba in the water. They shut it down. And Discovery Island, which lots of people still break into to this day, that ended up breaking down. It's actually still nearby the currently operating park. It's within the major lake in the middle, and people always just think that's an island, but no, there was actually like a theme park for a long period of time. So anyways, there were many major Disney attractions, and they are prevalent all around the world, and it is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So let's talk about some of the major ones. So there's like Epcot. Everybody knows Epcot. It's like the weird shaped like giant golf ball in the world. So Epcot's sort of unique and a permanent feature. So it's not something that's getting changed out seasonally like many different theme parks have, like they update events. So this sort of first came along with the sort of World's Fair theme, where it was a centralized focus piece, and there were 2 main different types of showcases nearby it. The first was technological changes. So it used to be that and these still sort of exist, but they're just not to the same extent that there were different pavilions nearby Epcot that were shown technology of the future. So many of them back in the early days would show like what houses would be like if they were automated. And like today we'd find them laughable, but it was having your dishes sort of like rise up by pressing a button that might be able to make it rise up, or having a centralized vacuum system through your house, or having the early concept of a Roomba, which was sort of like a giant box that you controlled with like a remote control. These sort of technological changes was something that was sort of showcased here. Epcot also, so they have their technological piece. They have their sort of their around the world experience, where there's like different sort of representations of different mini countries. So you can go and experience some of the culture and food of different places, whether it be China, whether it be Germany, whether it be many of these other sorts of places that you would experience around the world. So the showcase of understanding different country specific experiences and then technology experiences, this is sort of the foundation of Epcot. We also have Hollywood Studios. So this is at their California location. They have about 50 major shows, restaurants, and rides, with different backstage tours of Disney's Hollywood Studios, where you see a lot of things like being filmed, and there's a combination of sort of like real working motion pictures sort of happening around them, as well as sort of like animation pieces. They have some excitement and thrill rides that go through this, and sort of like these sort of movie and television studio attractions. We also have Disney World. So Disney World is one of the most popular destinations in the world by far. It brings in an outrageous amount of international travelers every single year since its opening in 1971. It has millions of guests every single year that pay astronomical amounts of money. While if you were a Florida resident, you can actually go for pretty affordable, because you get a massive discount on tickets if you're a Florida resident, because of the way that it's supposed to be geared towards taxing people from out of state. There's still a lot of fees. And then there's a lot of people who travel to Disney, but they travel to Disney World as an experience. So instead of just going to the theme park for the day, most people going down there, because for most families, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity if you do get to go. I came from a poor family, that's not the case. But for most families who do manage to go, it's not that you go there every weekend. It's something that's like an experience. So people might pay astronomical prices. As for example, the new Star Wars themed hotel and resort on on site can cost upwards of like $3,000 a night, and it's actually terrible. And that's not just me. That is the fact that they are now going around to anybody who stayed there in the last 2 years to be able to talk to them about what they liked and didn't like, to be able to overhaul the entire place. But there are many other ones that are very, very popular. There's ones that are related to Disney princesses. There are ones that are related to Cinderella's castle. There are many that have had much better public relations to it. But anyways, Disney World is about 30,000 and change acres and encompasses many smaller parks within it. So sort of like an Animal Kingdom and a bunch of different things. And you might be able to get passes to one of these or multiple ones of these and then travel in between them. There's many other different theme parks. So some of the major ones for you to know, for example, Universal Studios. So Universal Studios is another one that has both a Hollywood location and a Florida location. These are based around Universal-based products. I think they also have the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, and they also have, oh gosh, what's the other one? Some sort of like Marvel theme park. But Universal Studios Hollywood has been given guided tours of sort of like famous movie sets for almost 40 years. And this is where you get on a little cart and they take you through and you go through all sort of like the history of stuff in Hollywood. It's pretty cool. In addition to the Hollywood location, they have the Orlando location, which is very theme park focused around very specific themes with immersion experiences. For example, I think the Harry Potter one, they have like these little wands that you can like flick around and it makes things move. Universal Studios also expanded into many other places such as Singapore and Japan, and has future locations planned for Dubai in the UAE and Seoul. We'll see if that happens, because I think that's really going to depend on how tourism picks back up. One that's just interesting to us, mostly because it's within driving distance, and I'd recommend going if you ever get a chance, mostly because they have one of the best grilled cheeses, is Hershey's Park. So this is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's next to actually one of the Hershey's chocolate plants. So Hershey's chocolate's been around for a long time. And this park originally wasn't open for the public. It was a place sort of built by Milton Hershey, sorry, for two different reasons. One, so that his employees would have a place to relax. So they get off their shift, they're tired, give them some sort of place to have like fun when they're not on the job, to be able to take their kids to. They had like merry-go-rounds and other small themes and attractions. And it was supposed to be just sort of like a leisure park for specifically the employees, but also for the orphanage. So Milton Hershey was adopted himself and really cared about the well-being of orphans who at the time were not being treated particularly well. I mean, still today not treated particularly well, but like definitely not treated particularly well. So a lot of the money that came from the Hershey plant went towards an orphanage that I think is still around in Hershey, Pennsylvania, that was specifically designated towards like giving these children a better life experience, and the park was there for them as well, right? So after it had been around for quite a few years, after nearly 64 years of it being open for the orphanage and for the employees, it turned into a small regional park, and now people go and visit. They have Hershey Kiss themed lights up and down the streets, and everything smells like chocolate. It's kind of a cool place. Let's go through some other ones just real fast. There's the Florida Attraction Association, represents over 90 family operated or attractions throughout Florida. This can be zoos, swamps, lots of gator tours, stuff like that. There's Dollywood. So Dolly Parton is a magnificent and wonderful human being. She has her own theme park in the Great Smoky Mountains. A lot of the revenue from that theme park actually goes to support literacy programs. So she makes sure that every child in Tennessee is given books, but also supports the book programs of many other states, I think including West Virginia. So just millions of dollars into being able to support books for people within K-12, but primarily elementary school. Dollywood also has the best fried Snickers you will ever get at a theme park. Why I know so much about theme parks is because, one, it is my passion, but also two, me, my mom, and my sister basically just took off in a van for an entire summer and just tried to hit every single theme park in North America, just living out of a van. Because it was one of the last times we could. So before the Paramount parks got bought by Cedar Fair and sort of divided up in between other places, it used to be that if you had a pass to one of them, you could use a pass at all of them. You can't do that anymore. So we knew it was the last year it was going to happen, so we all just jumped in a van and just drove and kind of lived out of a van in between different theme parks for months and just checked them all out. It was kind of fun. I really enjoyed that section of life. But anyway, so I just know a lot about theme parks. There's also Legoland. People love Legoland. Legoland both has interactive experiences where you can build stuff, and it has just some of the cool and massive elements of things that you can build with Legos. Random fact, if there's ever a rare Lego set that you want and it's sold out everywhere, it will be in the Salt Lake City airport. Don't know why Salt Lake City airport actually has a Lego store, but everything's just like so bulky that you don't really want to take it on a plane. So no one actually buys them there, but it's where all the rare Lego sets are because no one buys them and they're still in the store. But anyways, Legoland has locations in England, Germany, California, Denmark, and Florida. There's also Gatorland, Wet and Wild. So Wet and Wild is a water-based attraction. So these are open for shorter periods of time, typically only in summer months. There's all the Cedar Fair parks, which I particularly like. I love the Cedar Fair parks. So these are like King's Dominion, Carowinds. Oh gosh, I think like 12 others that I could list. Then there's the Six Flags theme parks. Originally started in Texas, has grown massively elsewhere. They're currently in Missouri, Atlanta, a few other places. I'm not as much of a fan as of the Six Flag properties, mostly because of just some mismanagement and the fact that like they're the way that they queue people is inefficient, not nearly as inefficient as the fast pass system of Disney. If you're ever interested, there's a really good like 2-hour documentary on the math behind the fast pass system and why it actually makes it so that people on average go to less rides in a day than they would without the fast pass system existing. So anyways, Cedar Fair parks and Six Flag parks, those are two major conglomerates of theme park ownership in the US. There's many other types of attractions out there. So there's ones that we have to think about like zoos and aquariums. Approximately 181 million visits occur each year to zoos. So this is about half as much as to national parks, but like that's still a lot. Most zoos are for profit, but many are actually supported by the city in private-public partnerships. So this is why you have some zoos that are free or reduced price. For example, the one in St. Louis is free and is actually a very good zoo. The one in Atlanta is also, it's an okay zoo, but it's one of the only places where you'll see pandas in the US. One of my favorite zoos is actually Columbia, South Carolina. It is absolutely gorgeous and really just underrepresented. But anyways, the first zoo in the US was the Philadelphia Zoo in 1859. After that, we started to see many other zoos pop up. More famous ones are sort of like the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. This is another free zoo because it's part of the Smithsonian. So all the Smithsonian museums in DC are free to the public, so you can just go in and enjoy your time. If you ever just wanted a place where you can go and go to like 12 different museums for free, that's the one to do it in, including the zoo. The San Diego Zoo is also a very famous one. There's a book, I think it's Traveling with Giraffes or something like that, but it's one that like documents some giraffes going from New York all the way down to the San Diego Zoo. That has a lot of good information about historic zoos. But the San Diego Zoo is also pretty famous. Aquariums are also very popularized. So aquariums are ones that have water-dwelling creatures. So these are ones, for example, the beluga whales in Atlanta, the orca whales in multiple locations in Florida, many of which have been shut down because many of these containers were very, very small compared to the size of the animal, which is where there's been a lot of pushback on aquariums and a lot of social and eco connections with aquariums where there's a real concern on the welfare of animals. So figuring out if these are places that are providing good enclosures and habitats are ones that are not. And that's kind of where like the divide has been, because there's some who do it very well, some who don't. Anyways, these are multi-million-dollar showpieces because turns out water's expensive when you're buying it by the millions of gallons at a time. So these a lot of the time are show animals, water-dwelling animals, and aquariums aren't only fish or larger mammals of the sea, such as it can also be penguins, puffins, lots of water dwelling birds as well. All right, there's also historical places. So lots of people travel for historical places and heritage sites, such as like Williamsburg, Virginia, but there's ones all over the US. Jamestown's a pretty popular one. Plymouth Rock, which is the most disappointing small rock you'll ever see in your life, is actually really not worth going to. Please don't do that. But these are popular primarily with older adults and older generations. There's also many types of museums. General art, science, technology, natural history, history, and military are some of the main categories of museums. And I think there are thousands of museums throughout the US. Actually, there's what is it? It's like Mystery of the Museum or something like that. It's a show on the History Channel that goes and finds the most random museum in the middle of nowhere, finds their oddest thing that they have and like tells the story of it. It's pretty cool if you ever want just something to kind of like veg out to in the background. There's the Smithsonian Museum. So these are all the museums in Washington, D.C. that are supported by public funds. So they're actually free to the public. There's also lots of performing arts and different destination attractions. Whew. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the management of attractions and clubs. So decision making needs to be quick, right? If you have a theme park and one of your rides goes down, you need to have the process for figuring out what to do quickly. It needs to be second nature. And a lot of this is because there's already pre-programmed decisions. Many attractions run by a playbook of if this, then that. If this sort of thing happens, these are the steps that we will take. Because something going wrong can be detrimental. Why did the Hard Rock Cafe theme park in Myrtle Beach only last less than 2 seasons? One, because it's outrageously expensive. They did a fireworks show to Bohemian Rhapsody every night, which is it turns out very, very expensive to maintain, but also because there were some injuries on a roller coaster that they have that they weren't able to take care of, and people got re-injured, and that basically killed everybody going to it. And then the attraction went bankrupt, and then there were lawsuits, and then they went even more bankrupt. And like now there's still technically pieces of it under a subsidiary company, but it's been defunct for years, right? Having something go wrong can absolutely destroy an attraction. The death of an animal, the injury of an individual, the many different things that we see as recurring themes for why different attractions shut down. So having quality, consistency, and control and pre-programmed decisions and responses to anything that could go wrong is crucial when managing tourism and attractions. So these are very heavily focused on the quality of products and guest experiences while focusing on revenue and expenses, right? So figuring out like what people will pay for tickets, but really making sure that they have a safe and reliable experience. Never mind, I won't take you into that. I was going to tell you about like this horrific theme park that had these water flumes. So you know the water slides that do an entire 360. Turns out that those are really bad because people will get stuck in them. If you're going to have one, you actually have to have it more as an oval because then you can get the right trajectory. Anyways, so there's also clubs. Clubs is something really important to think about because it's actually not something that I've really experienced in my life because, again, I grew up poor, but private clubs are places where members sort of gather for social, recreation, professional, and fraternal reasons. And these are places where people spend a ton of money to be part of the socialite experience, to be able to have the right to be able to enter this club and to be able to do the things. So clubs have billions of dollars of economic impact. Many times they have golf courses attached to them. They have different sort of gatherings. They might have different vacation destinations. So many of the ones specifically like in New Jersey have partnerships with different places on the lake, so people can go there in summer on the lake. And these the basic level of competency required for a general manager in a club requires a large understanding of private club management, food and beverage, accounting and financial management, human and professional resources, and building facilities, because these aren't only resorts. A lot of times these are places where people might come for dinner, or people might have reservations long standing ahead of time, or people might pay one fee that's supposed to take them through for long periods, or it might be something that people summer at and you might be there for long periods of time. So being able to deal with all those different types of places, really important. So clubs can be lots of different things. You can have country clubs, you can have professional clubs. So these are the ones that might be more like an airport lounge, but on steroids, where you just have like lots of different professionals coming in and being able to like talk with each other in sort of a managed area. Social clubs, athletic clubs, dining clubs, university clubs, military clubs, fraternal clubs, proprietary clubs. There's so many. We also need to think about like non-commercial recreation, volunteer organizations, where revenue comes from membership fees, food and bev sales, and facility rentals. That's actually a huge driving impact in between different sorts of clubs as well. For example, the Shiners, I always forget what they are, but anyways, they like raise money for burn wards, and they do that through different sort of membership fees and food and beverage sales at different events, and they give it to burn wards, specifically ones that work with children, which is kind of neat. So that's just some of the different types of recreation. Okay, so we've gone through tourism, we've gone through recreation. Very, very short one next. So don't freak out about the fact that we have another video. It's going to be a short video, but it's going to go a little bit through gaming attractions in the US. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye.